No, the Green Bay Packers didn't win the Super Bowl, but does the Super Bowl change the way that you feel about the Packers, about how their season ended?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. No, the Packers didn't win the Super Bowl, but the Eagles did. And they did it in about as dominating a fashion as you could. And that means a 15-2 Chiefs team with Patrick Mahomes, the greatest quarterback of his generation, arguably the greatest ever, the best quarterback I've ever seen. With one of the all-time great coaches, frankly, on both sides of the ball. They had no answers for Jalen Hurts, for Vic Fangio, for this front four, nothing. The Packers, on the other hand, had this team in a dogfight in the fourth quarter at their place in Philadelphia with Malik Heath and Bo Melton at receiver. This Packers defense played this Philly offense as well as any team in 4 months. 4 months. I understand watching Cooper DeJean take in a pick six is difficult. But I don't know how you can watch this Philadelphia Eagles front four demolish everything in its path and think, I wish we hadn't drafted that offensive lineman. I don't know how you could watch Josh Sweat eat up this Chiefs offensive line where you have a future Hall of Famer moving from guard to tackle because they didn't have the requisite talent, forget depth, talent along their offensive front. I don't know how you could watch that and go, man, I wish we hadn't drafted that offensive lineman. I don't know how you could watch the Packers play this Eagles team and watch that front four ravage Travis Glover and Kadeem Telford, even Elton Jenkins, frankly, and think, man, I wish they hadn't drafted that offensive lineman. The easiest way for a team to beat you is to beat you with 4-man rush. If they can get pressure with 4, you are screwed. Even if you are the greatest living quarterback, the best guy going, with the best offensive coach going, they had nothing for this team. With their starting receivers, with DeAndre Hopkins, with a first-round pick at receiver. In fact, 2 of them, if you want to count Hollywood Brown, who they brought in, but was originally a first-round pick. They made their free agent, their big name splash with DeAndre Hopkins. They did all the things that the Packer fans who complain about Brian Gutekunst want the Packers to do, and that they generally don't. And they got their brains beat in this game. Their brains beat. I don't know that I can point to another game where I saw a set of all-time greats in a high leverage spot look like this. There isn't a comparable Tom Brady, Bill Belichick game in their primes. It doesn't exist, not in the playoffs. And you can't, even 2016 Aaron Rodgers, but that team was, we knew that team was gassed. They were running on the fumes of fumes. And even that wasn't this bad against that Atlanta Falcons team that, by the way, went on and blow the big lead against Tom Brady's Patriots. Now, I don't bring the Jordan Morgan of it all up to just hand wave any issues that the Packers have or to defend every move Brian Gutekunst has made as GM. No. I'm not here to do that. And the weird thing about defending the Jordan Morgan piece of this is like, I didn't love the pick at the time. If he's not going to play tackle, and who knows, maybe he will. From a process standpoint, I hate it. But from a talent standpoint, he was worth a top 40 pick, no doubt. And if the Packers would have had him healthy, I think you can make the case. They have a much better shot to beat the Eagles than without him. The Packers didn't lose to the Eagles because they didn't have Cooper DeJean. They didn't lose to the Eagles because their nickel corner wasn't good enough. They lost because they couldn't block the Eagles. Now, that is also instructive in two ways. This pass rush, you got to figure out. Now, the fact that this Packers defense was this good without it, again, I think this reframes some of this because the fact that they were able to be as good as they were defensively without a four-man rush. Now, they were able to get pressure eventually. Jeff Hafley dialing up blitzes, running some games, simulated pressure, creeper pressure, all kinds of cool stuff he was able to put together. But think of how much better the defense could be if they could pressure with four. And again, not to lose too much sight of the forest for the trees. But how many times on Sunday did the Eagles need a play and they just said, okay, where is A.J. Brown? The first fourth down where he gets called for a ridiculous OPI, that's just a rail go ball. Now, the final line is going to show that, it wasn't like A.J. Brown was dominant. But when you have that guy, it just makes life easier for you. The Packers don't have that guy. And when you look at this Eagles team, you look at it and you say, objectively, they were more talented than the Chiefs. They were more talented than the Commanders. They were more talented than the Rams. They were more talented than the Packers. I got to tell you, I wrote about this, I think after the 2019 NFC Championship game for Acme Packing Company. I'd have to go back and double check this. But it is frustrating to watch this team every year and go, yeah, they pushed the most talented team. They came up short, and it's impossible to not think, well, one of the reasons is because you weren't as talented. It's frankly what makes 2014 so frustrating, because I never thought the Packers were as good as that Seahawks team, and then they outplayed that Seahawks team for 58 minutes and gave away the game. But in 2019, that 49ers team was just better. Now, I think the Packers, with David Bakhtiari, I think you can make the case they're every bit as talented as that Buccaneers team. That Bucs team was just a horrible matchup for that particular Packers team. 2021, I think a lot of the same story. Like, that 2021 Packers team was good offensively. They were, in fact, dominant offensively. But player for player, were they more talented than that 49ers team? I don't think so. So I don't know about you, but I'm sick of the Packers not having the most talented team. That means you have to go out and be aggressive in adding. Now, I don't think they need 6 guys. They need their best players to play like their best players. They need Jordan Love in these big games to play like we saw him play last year, frankly, in 2023. It would be nice to get someone like Jair Alexander back to try and mend those fences if they're mendable. In a lot of ways, like I'm ready to sing Kumbaya on this show today because I'm like, this Packers team is close, man. Like one field tilter on either side of the ball feels like it can be enough to get them in a because of the talent they've added the last 2 years. Because you nailed Xavier McKinney, because you nailed the acquisition of Josh Jacobs, because this draft, Edgerrin Cooper is a damn superstar. Evan Williams is a really good player. You brought in a superstar defensive coordinator, someone who can have that Spagnuolo type or that Fangio type impact on a team and take much the same group and vastly improve what you're getting out of it. That's not to say, again, that this was all perfect. It wasn't. But it does feel today that they are closer than it seemed the Monday after the game. Now, would they have been capable, fully healthy, of beating this Eagles team that was, by the way, fully healthy? They even get Brandon Graham back, 11 weeks after tearing a muscle? Like, that's crazy. But they're close. If they want to add a receiver, though, it's trickier than you might think. I'll explain why next on Locked On Packers. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I wrote about this today over at The Leap, a newsletter I would, of course, love for you to subscribe to. Just add a pass catcher, a veteran pass catcher, Josh Jacobs says. Yeah, okay. Whomst. Because it can't be just add a veteran. Just add Robert Woods. That's my go-to example on this. Well, just add Sammy Watkins. Well, this is not. None of those. It has to be someone like Sammy Watkins needed to play snaps for that Packers team. That version, whatever that looks like this offseason, that guy's not playing for the Packers. Like even with Watson out, you've got Dobbs, you've got Wicks, you've got Reed, you've got Heath, you've got Melton. Is one of those kinds of players really going to move the needle for you? No. Deebo Samuel wants to be traded. Okay. Deebo Samuel plays in the same position, frankly, as your best and most consistent, reliable receiver, Jayden Reed. He's a slot gadget player who doesn't have the explosiveness that he used to. Is not going to, on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, get open and create for you on a regular basis. Now, I do think there, in a situation like that, his ability to make plays with the ball in his hand makes him an interesting potential chess piece for a team like the Packers. But how do you get him on the field at the same time as Jayden Reed? I think that fit just doesn't make sense. The complicating factor in all of this too is then you're clearing the decks for the 49ers to pursue Devonte Adams, who, according to multiple reports now, would like to play on the West Coast. Now, I'm going to get to Devonte in a second. Cooper Kupp, we found out, is going to be traded. Same problem. He's a slot receiver. Now on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, yes, he can go get you a bucket, but then you're taking your most dynamic receiver off the field. It just doesn't seem like good business. I like the idea. If you could find whatever the boundary version of that is, great. Go do it. That's an opportunity. I don't think right now that guy exists outside of one player. DK Metcalf is a name that's been brought up. Trade for DK Metcalf. Well, why would a team that sees itself as a NFC playoff team or a team that would like to be in the playoffs next year, why would they be trading a highly productive former high pick who's one of the most explosive vertical receivers in the league? Why would they be doing that? Well, they would be doing that because they want to reorient their offense around Jackson Smith-Njigba, and because on 3rd and 6, DK Metcalf is not really the guy who's going to go get you a bucket. He's not really the guy who's going to tutor the younger players, who's going to take them under his wing and say, hey, look, this is how you got to run this route. Hey, this is how you're going to set this corner up. That's not DK Metcalf. If anything, like Romeo Doubs is going to have to do that with DK. I understand saying, hey, as a 1-for-1 replacement, and maybe more like, frankly, 2-for-1 replacement for Christian Watson's production and impact and gravity and all that stuff, DK Metcalf makes a ton of sense. He absolutely does. But I don't know that he fixes the problem that your offense has such that you think one exists. Now, if the Packers think, hey, look, on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, we like creating matchups with Tucker Kraft. We think Jaden Reed as a route runner can do more. Option routes from the slot can be a bigger part of the offense. Those kinds of things. I'm for seeing that through. I'm for seeing that plan. That's a pretty big gamble though. Then you're adding an expensive backup plan, and then you got to probably have to pay him because he's only got one more year left on his deal. You're probably gonna have to pay him. Is that where you want to allocate your money? I'm asking. T. Higgins, of course, a name being brought up. But if you were mad at Christian Watson not playing, T. Higgins has some issues staying on the field too. I think that is an underrated part of this. Like, you're going to have to pay T. Higgins, in excess of $30 million a year. And this is a guy who has never been a true number one in his offense, has always benefited from Jamar Chase being there. And in the last 2 seasons has missed 10 games. So there are some injury questions there. Now, I think they're a little overblown. Like, he played at least 12 games every year of his career. But it is, I think, important to point out that the last 2 have been the ones that have been the most injured. Now, maybe that is related to his contract. If he were a little more financially secure, maybe that hamstring or that back or whatever it is would feel a little bit better on some of those days. He would not be the first player to say, I'm only going to play when I'm 100% because I'm not, risking my health for a team that's not willing to pay me my real value. But there are injury concerns there, and you're paying him a truckload of money. I almost said a word that rhymes with truckload but isn't. And they're not going to use a first round pick, and any even a second round pick, you are really putting a lot of pressure on a rookie to have to come right in and be the alpha of your room. That defeats the purpose of what Josh Jacobs is asking for, having a veteran come in and be your guy. The fringe veterans that are out there, or even like the solid veterans that are out there, really don't move the needle. Like, this is the weird thing about where the Packers are with this receiver room is they've got 4, but 3 healthy, good at least good players. Like, you're not replacing mid with a good player. So if you're bringing in a veteran, they've got to be at least as good as the players you have and not duplicative in their skill sets or their usage. That leads us to Devonte Adams. Devonte Adams makes the most sense out of anyone they could bring in because he can do the things that we're talking about: bucket getting, veteran leadership, all that stuff. And he's literally already been a Packer. One of the biggest parts of free agent risk and one of the under-discussed risk factors in free agency is the unknown. You just don't know what you're getting day in and day out with as much research as you can do. Unless they're in the building, you don't know for sure. You know for sure the situation with Devonte Adams. Matt LaFleur has coached Devonte Adams. Most of the guys on this offensive coaching staff have coached Devonte Adams. And Jordan Love has thrown to Devonte Adams. Josh Jacobs has played with Devonte Adams. Elton Jenkins played with Devonte Adams. Zach Tom was on a team. No, he was class of 2022. So that was part of the thing. So I guess if Josh Myers walks, Elton Jenkins is the only member of that offensive line that has played with Devonte Adams. But your quarterback has. Your coach has called plays for him. One of your other offensive star leaders is advocating for him. He really checks all the, and I don't think would cost an arm and a leg in terms of dollar costs. This is why I have said that the Packers cannot wait. And it's not a coincidence to me that we get the report. There was an ESPN report and an NFL Network report within 24 hours. So this was coordinated leakage, which sounds like a medical condition, but isn't. Well, that Devonte would like to play on the West Coast. You know what that is? A player saying, trade for me. If you want me, trade for me, Packers. And trying to deaden a little bit of the PR push from the Packers, the players, even Devonte himself feeding into this, making it seem like he'd like to go back to Green Bay, but going, hey, look, on the open market, I'd much rather go to California. So if the deals are, if I get cut, and he's probably going to get cut, and the deals are close to even, I'd rather play out in California, even if that's a mistake from a tax standpoint or a dollar standpoint or whatever. The reason you would make the trade is because you can negotiate with Adams a new deal and you are guaranteeing you have him under contract. Now, you're not going to pay the contract that he's on. But once you have it, if you really wanted to, you could move some money, you could add void years, you could do whatever you wanted to give you at least some short-term flexibility. But what you would likely do is say, Devonte, we're trading for you. We're going to rework this deal. And I have said before, I think he's $35 million or something crazy this year. You give him the Mike Evans deal with interest. 2 years, 45. It's the new deal. You're basically ripping up the new deal. Maybe you add a fake year, but it's 2 years, 45. It makes sense for everybody. The reason I bring this up is because if you want to get someone who not only moves the needle, but does something new for you, the path is narrow. It's narrow. And I think that puts pressure on the Packers to get something like this done. Let's have Mock Draft Monday. We'll do that to close out a Monday Locked On Packers. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Apologies if you live bet Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl last night like I did. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we are going to do what I like to call a live mock, right? So I'm going to tell you what we're doing as we're doing it. So who's available to the Packers at pick 23 here in our mock? So Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher from Texas A&M. I think if the Packers have a player like this available, they will be all over it. I really do. Armand Membu, the tackle from Missouri, also there. I don't think they would do that 2 years in a row. Matthew Golden, the receiver from Texas. Now, I don't think he's produced enough. Even if I really like the tape, I really like the player. Omarion Hampton, an interesting name. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Really great Senior Bowl. All of a sudden, that's pushed him into this range. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State is here. I think defensive tackle very much in play, even with the questions about, Devonte Wyatt, Kenny Clark. We'll see. I just, at this point, I don't know how I can do anything but take Shamar Stewart. It is the pick that I understand will frustrate Packer fans because he's the freak athlete that does not have production. But my goodness, the talent that he has. And this is why I think, frankly, by the time it's all said and done, he's 20 years old, 6'6", 290, and moves so much freer than that. Like I know I'm gonna get seduced by it, so we're gonna do it. And I also think it's a reasonable situation. Like I think that there's a real opportunity for the Packers if he's there that they would take him. I think there's in fact a very good chance that they would do that. Okay, at 55, Ariante Ursary from Minnesota. I'm positive I butchered that. Jalen Walker, linebacker from Georgia, who I've taken in drafts before. Jaden Higgins, the receiver from Iowa State, who I've taken in drafts before. Like the really Packersy thing, I have to say, would be to take Donovan Jackson, the tackle from Ohio State, because if he hadn't gotten hurt, he'd probably be a no doubt first round pick. And Rasheed Walker, you got decisions to make there. Zach Tom, maybe you want to move him inside. There isn't a pass catcher here other than Jaden Higgins, and we've done that one, that I think makes sense. Jalen Royals is someone who, like, if I could trade down and still take him, I would really like that. A.Z. Thomas, someone who is getting first round buzz. I kind of like that. It would be way out of position here to do that. But he's the best corner on the board here. Oh, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, the best corner on the board by PFF. But light for the Packers. There's some safeties available here. I kind of want to take A.Z. Thomas, who had a great Senior Bowl week. He is 6'2", 198 pounds, not even 21 years old. This is the kind of bet you make here. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it and hope that there's a third round receiver for me to get here. And, perfect. I love this. Trey Harris, receiver from Mississippi. Now he's going to be 23, like any minute, but he's 6'3", 210. And when you want to talk about productivity, the guys that have produced on a yard per route run basis in college, the way that this guy has, they're basically all good. Like they're basically all really good. And so I think this is a great opportunity. You add a player like Devonte Adams, let's just say. You get a young player in here. Now he's not going to give you the Christian Watson stuff. Like this, it's going to test Matt LaFleur's ability to use Bo Melton creatively, to use Jaden Reed creatively, to push safeties back, to use Luke Musgrave potentially creatively, to push safeties back, just to stretch the seam of the defense. Trey Harris is not a burner. He's a really good player. He's a really good football player. So to come out of this draft with Shamar Stewart, AZ Thomas, and Trey Harris, I mean, those are three potential starters for the Packers, at least not, if not now, in a year. I think the first one would bother some people. I think the second two people would be doing backflips over. So it'd be a pretty normal Brian Gutekunst draft. Like, I think this is pretty realistic as we stand here today on whatever it is, February 10th. Back tomorrow. We got a tight end show tomorrow. Jermichael Finley on the program. Kyle Rudolph. Zach Randolph is going to be on the show. No, Kyle. Oh my goodness. The all tight end show tomorrow on Locked On Packers. So follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Same with Blue Sky. I guess it's not Peter_, but you know the deal. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Of course, rate us 5 stars, leave a review. Just say, hey, Peter, what's happening? I can't, for legal reasons, use that drop anymore. The show is too big. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get sued. No, thank you. So also, wherever you find us on Instagram, I guess we're there doing those videos that you see all the time. Our Jordan Love video blew up. Shout out if you missed that. We'll play the clip. I think, this week, just in case you missed it on the social medias. But we're always here on YouTube, for example, so you can stay locked on Packers.